You want to read Loving Day? And I'll read Juneteenth? Or you want to read Juneteenth?
You'll read Juneteenth, and I'll read Loving.
Yeah. Does that work? Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to Albany City Council meeting Wednesday, June 8th, 2022 at 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we have a roll call, Gabe, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Alex Johnson II.
Here.
Councilors Olson.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Bartholomew.
Here.
Kopczynski.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
And Smith.
Here.
All members present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is a proclamation. Councilor Bartholomew has agreed to read the first one, Loving Day.
Loving Day, June 12th, 2022. Whereas in 1958, Mildred Jeter, an African-American woman, and Richard Loving, a white man, married in Washington, D.C., and whereas when the Lovings returned to their home in Virginia, they were arrested and sentenced to a year in jail for breaking the state's anti-miscegenation laws banning interracial marriage. The judge suspended the sentence in exchange for the Lovings' agreement to leave Virginia for 25 years. And whereas the Loving family took their case to the United States Supreme Court, and on June 12, 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court decided unanimously in the Lovings' favor and overturned their convictions in the case of Loving versus Virginia. And whereas this decision marked an important milestone in the era of Jim Crow race discrimination laws, ending bans on interracial marriage in 17 states and granting the freedom to marry to interracial couples across the nation. And whereas an annual celebration known as Loving Day is held on June 12th in communities throughout the nation to commemorate and celebrate the anniversary of the 1967 Supreme Court decision. Now, therefore, I, Alexander D. Johnson, II, Mayor of the City of Albany, Oregon, do hereby proclaim June 12th, 2022 as Loving Day in Albany and encourage all citizens to recognize this day as a celebration of multiculturalism and to reflect on the Loving family and all of the pioneers who have fought and will continue to fight for the civil right to love. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Albany to be affixed this 8th day of June, 2022. Alexander D. Johnson II, Mayor.
Proclamation, Juneteenth, June 19th, 2022. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, declaring enslaved Africans and their descendants in Confederate territories free, paving the way to the passage of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation provided the legal framework for the emancipation of nearly all 4 million slaves. And whereas June 19th, 1865, almost 2.5 years later, Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced the end of both Civil War and slavery. And whereas June 19th has a special meaning to Americans of African ancestry, it is also called Juneteenth, combining the words June and 19th, and has been celebrated by African American community for over 150 years. And whereas Oregon's constitutional ban on both slavery and free Americans of African ancestry or descent laid the foundation for generations of economic hardship, exclusion, and discrimination against Oregon's African American community. And whereas despite these obstacles, Americans of African ancestry in Oregon have been and continue to be a dynamic and vital community members and leaders with our state. And whereas Juneteenth has been celebrated in Oregon since 1945, and the Oregon legislature unanimously voted to recognize Juneteenth as a legal state holiday beginning in 2022. Now, therefore, I, Alexander D. Johnson II, Mayor of the City of Albany, Oregon, do hereby proclaim and recognize June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth in Albany, Oregon, and urge all citizens to become more aware of the significance of this celebration in African American history and the heritage of our nation and city. In witness whereof, I hereto set my hand and cause the seal of Albany, the City of Albany, to be affixed on the 8th day of June, 2022. Alexander D. Johnson II, Mayor. Okay, thank you very much. We have a special presentation for Ophelia's Place, and it will be done by Verna Wise Matthews. Thank you.
Do I need to push any buttons or
Yeah,
anything?
you should be able to turn the mic on.
Close.
And pull it closer to you because we've had issues with mics. You just turn it off. Don't listen to me, it's okay.
How's that?
That's better, thank you.
Mayor Johnson and members of the council, my name is Verna Wise Matthews, and I've been the executive director at Ophelia's Place since 2007. Seated behind me is Terry Conklin. He's the communications director at Ophelia's Place, which many of you have already met. We both thank you very much for inviting us here to share a little bit about Ophelia's Place and your neighbor 2 blocks down. We're on the corner of 4th and Lion Street. I didn't make that connection until I drove up. To give you a little bit of history, Ophelia's Place started in 2005. The founder was a woman who started a medical business, a business that created medical technology in her garage in Johnson City, Oregon. Once she retired, she had been a board member of a domestic violence organization in Eugene. And she had a vision of a place where girls could come and talk to a trusted adult. She believed in prevention, and she loved the idea of helping girls build skills and resources so that they could spot an unhealthy relationship, so that they could build their communication skills, and that they could make healthy decisions, even when life was hard. Her hope was, and still is, that our work at Ophelia's Place will propel girls to a future that excites them and makes them proud. And that if they choose to be mothers, that they will pass those skills down to their children for generations and generations. Everything we do at Ophelia's Place is still rooted in our founder's original vision. We do 4 primary things. Any girl aged 10 to 18 is welcome at Ophelia's Place. Any girl. We offer after-school drop-in. She can also take classes during that time. And she can hang out with our staff and some of our trained, mostly college interns. We offer therapy for girls who need someone to talk to. And we offer programs. We go into schools, and we've been going into schools for about 5 years here in Albany, our middle schools and high schools. And we provide, facilitate girl empowerment groups. And we also provide classroom presentations on topics like healthy relationships, bullying and harassment, how to stay safe on the internet, and many, many more to both genders of students, to all genders of students. Finally, we offer training for parents as well as adults who work with youth. So if you have a child in your life or youth that you work with, Ophelia's Place is a great place to come ask for information or questions that you might have. I am proud to say from the day that Ophelia's Place opened in 2005, we have been, because of the generosity of our founder, fundraising, grantors, and local donors, we have never, ever turned anyone away for lack of ability to pay. By chance, I happen to be the mother of 3 beautiful daughters who are in their late 20s currently. They were born here in Albany and attended Central Elementary School. And although I have worked in Eugene for the last 15 years, I'm really, really excited to bring Ophelia's Place to Albany and many people that I've stayed in contact with. Terry brought flyers. I believe they were passed out on your desk. And we have some others by the door. They're inviting you to a couple of different activities, one specifically for girls and then one's open for the public in late July. I hope you'll take advantage of those and that you'll also bring a girl, your neighbor with you. As I mentioned, we are located in the old, I love this, the old liquor store facility, creating a safe place for girls to hang out. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Council, any questions? Counselor Smith, any questions? No? I have a question. Is parental consent required for young women to participate?
We follow the laws. So for therapy, yes, 14 and under, they have to get parental consent. And everything we do, transparent, our doors are wide open. We hope that parents will come with their child, and we have an orientation for the child and parent. And we know that there are some girls that might not have that support from their parents, and we welcome them as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm excited to have you in town.
We're excited to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Almost here.
So the grand opening, the event on the 27th through 17th is the Welcome Wednesday. Is that just for girls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the event on the 30th would be, so a male could walk in and okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll also be having some tours, so you'll probably get an invitation to do tours. We were delayed a little bit because of staffing. It's just been hard to find staff, but we found a great gal who grew up in Albany, is graduating from Washington State next month, and we're putting her through some serious training because it's so much what we do. There's places that have drop-ins in classes, but it's how we do it. We have trauma-informed, strength-based environment, and we hold true to that. So we're taking our time making sure that staff is prepared for the girls when they come.
I'm happy to hear that. Today I received a phone call from a young lady that I met during the If I Were the Mayor contest, and she expressed concerns about some things going on in her life, and I connected her with the right folks, but I didn't know if his place was here. So from now on, I'll start routing those calls to you. Thank you.
And until we get the doors open two blocks down, we do have services online, and we'll continue to have.
Okay.
So you can start referring girls to us anytime.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and welcome to town.
Thank you.
Next is the public hearing. So I'm going to read this. I have a certain set of rules I have to read, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Martineau. Next on the agenda is a legislative and quasi-judicial public hearing regarding planning files AN-01-22 and ZZC-01-22. Proposal is an annexation of a 22-acre property with concurrent zoning map amendments to the residential single-family RS5 and residential mixed density, medium density RM zoning districts. The annexation will also remove the property from the taxing district of the Albany Rural Fire Protection District. I call to order this legislative quasi-judicial public hearing at 6:13 p.m. If you wish to testify, there will be three options available, which will be described on the agenda. Do any members wish to declare a conflict of interest? Do any members wish to report an ex parte contact? Where's Counselor Smith at? I don't see her.
I drive by it relatively regularly.
Okay, you drive by it? Okay. It's like we all drive by it. Any ex parte, Counselor Smith? Okay, thank you. Do any members report, did the ex parte already? Do any members wish to report a site visit? And we just had a couple of people say they drove by. Do any members wish to abstain from participating in the proceedings? Okay. Does anyone wish to challenge the city council's right to determine this matter or the participation of any council member in this hearing and decision? If so, please raise your hand if you are attending in person. If you are attending virtually, please turn on your camera and raise your hand to be called upon. Or if you're attending by phone, please unmute yourself and state your name so you can be called on. Any hands up out there? Hands up. Everybody's good there? Good. At this time, I will call for a reading of the meeting procedures. Mr. Martineau, you've done it. Thank you. Microphone.
For all those wishing to testify, please be aware that you must raise an issue with enough detail to afford the City Council and parties an opportunity to respond to the issue if you later want to raise that issue on appeal. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the approval standards staff will describe or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or development code that you believe apply to the decision. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the City Council may allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court.
At this time, I will call upon staff report from Project Planner David Martineau.
Okay, thank you, sir. So this is really a continued hearing from May 25th. And so at that time, staff was given the opportunity to present the staff report, but I can certainly summarize this request. This is an application to request to annex 22-acre parcel located south of Ellingson Road, together with a request to apply RM and RS5 zones to the property. The property is currently located within the urban growth area and is contiguous to the city limits on the east side. The applicant is Justin Gross, represented by land use planner Laura LaRocque of Udell Engineering. And so at this point in the chair guide here, I think we did take, you did consider testimony from the applicant. And so if you'd like request her to provide more testimony at this time, that would be fine. The next step then is whether council members have questions for the applicant. And
Actually,
then-
it's for you. So do any
Okay.
council members have clarifying questions for you, the staff report?
Right.
Does anybody have anything? Okay. Do you have any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. We will now be taking public testimony, and no one signed up to speak, correct? We're taking public testimony first from those in favor of the applications, followed by those in opposition or with concerns, and finally from anyone who is neutral. If anyone wishes to enter an exhibit into the record, into the record as part of your testimony, please briefly describe the exhibit and then email it to the address provided. No one signed up to speak or in opposition. To those, nobody spoke. We will now be taking public testimony from those who did not register to speak beforehand. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you are attending in person, if you are attending virtually, please turn on your camera and raise your hand to be called upon. If you're attending by phone, please unmute yourself and state your name to be called upon. Does any member of the audience wish to speak in favor of this application? Nope. Does any member of the audience wish to speak in opposition or express concerns about this application? Does any member of the audience wish to speak neutrally on of the application? Does any applicant have any rebuttal testimony? I'm guessing not. Does anyone have procedural questions that would like to raise at this time? If so, please raise your hand if you're attending in person. If you're attending virtually, please turn on your camera and raise your hand to be called upon. Or if you're attending by phone, please unmute yourself and state your name to be called upon. Everybody's there?
Mayor,
Yes.
at this point, I think Director Rutgers would like to come up and give talk a little bit about the annexation agreement that was the issue the other night at the last meeting before we closed the hearings, in case somebody has a question about
Okay.
that. So,
Director?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Apologies, I wasn't here for the initial hearing, was out of town, but there were some questions that came up about the annexation agreement. Since that meeting, I have actually met with City Attorney and the applicant, and we've looked at if an annexation agreement would, in this case, be required. Certainly, there was not an intent by staff to surprise the applicant with an annexation agreement. What we came up with was the annexation agreement this time would not be required. Everything that would have been in an annexation agreement, we will get at the time of development or can be required with the act development, which isn't being proposed right now. It's just annexation this time. So that's why we're kind of saying annexation agreement isn't needed right now. And here to answer any questions you have about that.
Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so you say it's not required now. The person that objected to, like, well, you made me do it, why not them? Were they farther along when they signed the annexation agreement, or is it?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. There is another annexation that's going to be coming up, and we will apply some consistency when we talk about that. And just to be clear, in the past, the city hasn't seen a whole lot of annexations. So annexation agreements have been they've been applied kind of inconsistently. So we're going to be cleaning that up a little bit and taking a little bit harder look of when they're actually required. In this particular case, the annexation agreement was designed or was implemented as a benefit for the applicant. I've talked with city attorney and the applicant for this particular one and determined that all the things we would have looked at, put into an annexation agreement, we'll be able to do with the actual development itself.
Okay.
Yeah,
Councilor
so
Kopczynski.
I'm inferring that we would deny both of these proposed ordinances this evening because we don't need to have the annexation.
We don't need an annexation agreement for this annexation.
Separate from the annexation itself.
Correct.
Okay.
In the prior meeting, there was going to be a condition. What we're tonight is that condition is no longer needed.
So that, okay.
So I can go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we can have council comment.
Yeah, and I'm going to clarify with Matt. I think to answer Counselor Johnson's question, I think to help answer that, the other party you're talking about will, and Matthew can correct me if I'm wrong, will also not be required to do an annexation agreement. So they will be treated the same. Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I will close the public hearing at 6:21 p.m. Does the city council wish to discuss this case further?
Just point of
Councilor
clarification to
Novak.
make sure I'm understanding. So if I am understanding correctly, sir, you're saying that they don't need to do an annexation right now, but at the point of
Agreement.
development, the annexation agreement is not necessary right now, but at the point of development, then we'll need to talk annexation?
So the annexation agreement is a tool that's used at the time of annexation to spell out requirements of the annexation. What we're saying is that's not needed in this case. When a development application is submitted, that development application will be required to follow our development code as any application. And what we're saying is application of the development code in this case would achieve the same result that an annexation agreement would right now. So it's being kind of belt and suspenders, if you will. So it's not necessary.
Not at any point.
Not at annexation. No, we will not come back at development and ask for an annexation agreement. That point will have already been passed, and it's not needed.
Thank you.
You good, Counselor?
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you. Anybody else over here? Counselor Bartholomew?
My understanding is that we annex the property, but do not have to have an annexation agreement.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Good? We're all good? Go ahead, Counselor Kopczynski.
I move the city council adopt an ordinance that would approve the land use application for annexation with concurrent rezones to RS5 and RM under planning files AN 0122 and ZC 0122 as described in the April 25th, 2022 staff report. This motion is based on findings and conclusions in the staff report, testimony presented at the hearings, and the findings in support of the application made by city council during deliberations on this matter.
I'll second, and I have a comment.
Go ahead, Counselor.
I think it might be helpful to stop using the term annexation agreement when we're talking about the annexation of property only. The agreement that we're discussing has to do with what happens on that property as it's developed after it has been annexed through this procedure tonight.
Agree.
Those terms can be confusing, apparently.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. So Sean, so do I go ahead and do the first reading, or do I do a
So
motion?
we're going to do, we would do a first reading on this.
Well, I have a motion and a second. I haven't had a vote yet. Do I need to do a vote now?
We could go ahead and vote to approve,
The first reading.
and then, the first reading is usually automatic, but yeah, go ahead and.
So I have a motion and a second for the first reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed
Aye.
say no. Thank you. So would the city attorney please read the ordinance and proclaiming annexation in title only?
Yeah, Mayor, okay, we were just deciding whether.
I've already closed the meeting.
Yeah, so we were saying, I don't have a paper copy of this ordinance on the dais tonight, and so I'm looking, I don't know if Gabe has one or somebody that I can read real quick, so I didn't have one up here tonight.
I have it here on my screen, my printout.
Well, I can read it off the screen if it's up there, if somebody can put it up there. Up. An ordinance proclaiming annexation of property identified on Lynn County Assessor's Map number 11S-03W-29, tax lot 501, and amending ordinance number 4441, which adopts the City of Albany zoning map by amending the Albany zoning map and adopting findings of fact and conclusion.
Move that the ordinance be read a second time in title only.
Second.
Actually, Counselor Olson had a question.
Okay.
When do we get to ask a question or two?
I've-
At this point?
I've been over that like 4 times already.
Yeah, okay. The question I have is this the highest density zoning we have in the city for residential?
No, we actually have a zone that's more dense. It would be called the residential density attached.
Okay. And this is RM, which is next to that.
Right.
Yeah. And does that agree with our plan for the future?
It does. It's consistent with the that went South Albany area plan.
Yeah. And is that what we have every place on the periphery of our city? Highest possible zoning? Highest possible
No,
density?
there are areas that are designated in the Albany plan that are low-density residential. These happen to be both. They have areas on properties that look down at RM as well as RS5. And I think that's because of the proximity of these properties to the materials in the area, like Ellingson.
So all our arterials are going to be bordered by high-density rentals, apparently.
Remains to be seen what type of development will occur there.
I think it's unfortunate.
Thank you very much, David. Would the city attorney, so we have a motion and a second on second reading?
I have another question based on what Counselor Olson just asked, if I may. I don't.
Go ahead, go ahead.
You know, again, just to clarify, you said the type of development remains to be seen. On the one hand, I'm sure that's the case because you don't have a developer stepping up. But my question is, if it's zoned in a certain way, then it has to be developed in a certain way, does it not?
So in the, for instance, in the RM zone, the medium density residential, zone, that zone allows a whole range of developments from detached single family residences, all of the housing choices, the duplexes, the triplexes, fourplexes, and it also allows multifamily development. So it really can be very, very broad on what types of uses and in what combination those uses would take place in that zone. In the RS5 zone, it's a family single unit zone. However, now with the recent changes due to state law, we would allow detached single family as well as duplexes and any of the middle housing choices, but not multifamily units.
I really appreciate you clarifying that. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank-
So we have a motion and a second on the second reading. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed say no.
I'm opposed.
So we need 6-0, correct?
Bring it to the next meeting.
It'll be 5-1.
It's 5-1 right now.
Yeah.
So we bring it
Yeah,
back
it
to
has
the
to be unanimous for the second reading, so we have to bring it back. for
Okay,
next
thank you. Okay, is there a second? We did that. We did a roll call. So the only person who voted no was Counselor Olson. What is senior? So do I need to keep going on this then? It says,
Ordinance 2, we don't
Yeah.
do anything until, because we haven't passed ordinance 1.
yes, we
Correct.
have to wait
Yeah, we
until,
just move on to the next item on the agenda now.
okay, next item on the agenda. Thank you for that clarification. Supplemental budget. The next one is supplemental budget by Director Yeager from Finance. Next on tonight's agenda is the public hearing for supplemental budget. Directions for how to testify, submit written materials is published in this council agenda. I declare the public hearing open at 6:30 PM. Do I have a staff report?
Yes. The reason we had to have a hearing is because we had one fund that had changes in expenditures that were over 10%. Honestly, most of the items in the supplemental budget have already been discussed at council, and we're just formalizing that process. We would have been able to make these changes throughout the year through resolutions, but this is a cleaner way of doing it, and this way it's to track, and we can bring them all together. About 84% of the changes in the supplemental budget have to do with two items. One of them, the city services fee. Back in August, council approved the city services fee appropriations. There was a question about noticing. You all probably know with government meetings, there's a lot of notice requirements. One of those noticing requirements is that you have to advertise 5 to 30 days in advance. The day of the meeting doesn't count as one of those 5 days. And so what we're asking, just out of an overabundance of caution, is to have council repeal the original resolution that was made in August. And we're including it in this resolution. And so that would appropriate all the city services funds in the general fund and in recreation. The other one in this one has to do with some of the ARPA funds and appropriating those in water and in sewer for projects that council has already approved. We already had appropriated those in the grants fund. This is just to transfer those out so that they can be spent in the appropriate programs where they need to be spent. Additionally, there was a grant that was received by community development. It has to do with housing insecurity, lack of affordable housing, or homelessness. Council already approved that one through Resolution 7084. And in that resolution, it said that it would be appropriated in the next supplemental budget. So we're including that in this one also. There were a couple of small housekeeping items. One of the items that came up had appropriated a reserve as a transfer and found out later that we can't do that. And so we want to appropriate that as a contingency. Budget law is very strict on how you appropriate these things. It's just, that one is just a matter of housekeeping. We had some funding that was reported as a finance grant that really should have been police, so it just corrects that too. Those are very minor issues. The other one that we have has to do with an unexpected beginning fund balance in economic development. We had, when we budgeted for this, for economic development for transfer lodging taxes, we weren't expecting revenues to come in for hotels to recover as quickly as they did. So what the plan is to take some of those higher than expected beginning balance, repay the intra-fund loan that was made in the Economic Development Fund, to set up a reserve of $130,000 so that if we have another pandemic or another issue where revenues shorted, then we fall back on that to help pay for those, different obligations that we've made. And then also, there's money that's going out to departments during the pandemic when revenues were short, clawed back from city departments. And this is to give them back some of that funding. Also, it's setting aside $50,000 for collaborative for this. The other thing in that fund has to do with the road project. We had additional funds. We had funds left over after the project was completed, and those just get moved back to the Transportation SDC program. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of these items. As I said, most of these were already approved through council, and we're just formalizing the appropriations for them.
So I have to close the public hearing for council discussion. You guys comfortable with that?
Okay.
So I now close the public hearing at 6:35 PM. Council discussion?
I do.
Councilor Johnson?
Okay, Director, I know we've probably talked about it before, but on almost all of the general fund, it says they will be charged, customer service charge, and then it says in parentheses, city service fees. I don't understand that. Can you tell me?
Yeah, so most of those allocations in general fund are from the city services fee. What we're calling out is that a portion of those funds go to pay for Works customer service utility billing for sending out the bills and all of that. That's what those customer service charges are for.
Weren't they already budgeted from?
They were already appropriated in the original supplemental budget done back in August.
Okay.
So there's no changes from that supplemental budget for the city services fee. This is just repealing the original supplemental budget and then including it in this one.
Councilor Olson?
Yes, we have a bunch of lists here. And I think I spotted one part of the ARPA funds on page 18, $5 million worth. And can you tell me where the other one is? I think it's about $1 million or so.
We still have funds that are sitting in the grants fund, the ARPA monies. Captain Wells will be talking tonight about using those funds for another purpose. But this program, the 5.2 million is going toward Cox Creek Interceptor.
Yep.
Then 500,000 is going towards membranes. And those were approved by council back in December.
I remember that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, but I voted no then. I'm going to vote no now, too. So I feel it's inappropriate to spend that ARPA money on this type of thing.
On Cox Creek? Okay. So
I'm saying I plan to vote no on this resolution.
okay.
And that's our resolution on page 14, I believe.
So I had a question about the TLT dollars. Today was the first time I've heard you put TLT and economic development together in a sentence. So when did that change for us?
It didn't change. So one of the programs in development is economic development activities, and those are funded by TLT dollars in that one program.
Okay. So with the boom, so as things go up with TLT, will ADA and AVA receive any uptick in their allocation for that?
Not from this funding. Now it's allocated towards the fund loan payment, which should help the outside programs in the future because we won't have to pay back year over year. It'll just take care of it all now.
Okay.
And then the collaborative tourism program is a program that's inside the city, but it also pays for, there's also some contributions towards the trolley
Okay.
and towards Monteith House. Those were included in these appropriations.
So, okay, thank you for that. So my question is that people have told me, I've received information that TLT was told, or those organizations, AVA and ADA were told that their spending would be capped. It would not go up if things went well. Is that true?
I think,
So what I mean is, like, say we have this big event coming down in Eugene,
yeah,
and so TLT dollars are going to kind of blow up a little bit, right? Does that money, does their payout increase the percentage? I mean, as far as the percentage stays the same because the dollars are higher, but they will receive the same amount or more because of the tourism that will be coming from that.
I think Seth Sherry can address the question. He's on.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Seth.
Hey, Mayor, it's a good question. So the way that we've dealt with this, and it would be the same for any other fund, if there's a positive balance at the end of this biennium, that would create a positive balance for the start of the next biennium, and funds could be reallocated. But there's no intent at this point, just because funds come in higher, say in a one quarter, to go ahead and distribute those right away. We're sticking to the budget for the biennium, but come this next budget cycle, there's opportunity to look at higher revenues if that happens to be the case, and how to use those funds.
So they're not capped. They're just at this time. This is what it is. We're going to go with that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we established the budget. During this biennium, we intend to stick with that budget. And if revenues come in higher, that affects our ability to budget differently for the next biennium.
Okay. Thank you. Any council?
You're
Councilor
welcome.
Olson?
Yes, I'd like to ask, what percent of the TLT money is now going to the AVA and the ADA?
If that question's for me, it's I'd have
Anybody
to
that
give
would
you
like to answer it. Yes.
I'll look, Councilor Olson, and give you an exact number next council session if you like. But roughly in this biennium, the council is spending a little over 70% of its transient lodging tax dollars on tourism promotion. So that includes the AVA and the ADA as well.
Well, I'd like to know those two individuals. What
Sure.
percent are they getting, and what percent did they get last year?
I'll go ahead and find the exact number and bring it back to you guys. I don't want to misquote it.
Okay, well, another good reason to vote no tonight on this, on this resolution.
But to be clear for everybody, this doesn't affect our biennial budget at all for any of the outside agencies.
Well, no, but it affects the ADA and the AVA, and that they're in the poorhouse.
Councilor Novak.
Yes, thank you. This is along those same lines. I guess when I saw the words collaborative tourism, I rather assumed that you were collaborating with the ADA and the AVA. I want to make sure that they are not being in any way cut out, because I think they're here, they're local, they're us. And I want to make sure that they stay part of any tourism outreach. I think that's vital. I think that's, if I'm understanding Councilor Olson correctly, that's his concern, and that is also very close to my heart. And I want that collaboration to always include the ADA and the AVA, who they're us, that they're Albany.
So Councilor Novak, the Collaborative Tourism Promotion Grant was a grant program that the council instituted a number of years ago to help support new and shoulder season events and activities. So it's been used as a competitive grant for things like the quilting festival that started a number of years ago. They received like a $5,000 grant to help with marketing costs. There was the Highland Games Festival, which received a similar grant. The Carousel has received grants in the past, I believe, for this. So it's to promote tourism and heads and beds through new and shoulder season events. And so it's a competitive grant that the Transient Lodging Tax Committee was given the opportunity to oversee by the council and make awards accordingly.
And they're likewise then free to award from that grant to our AVA and our ADA?
Yeah, it's been a little while since we've had the CTP fund, so I don't recall all of the past recipients, and they may have. Oh, in fact, I know that the AVA was a recipient a few years back because that's what funded their app that they created. I'm pretty certain about that.
So
Okay.
should we be inviting them to come in and lobby us as to what they need and what they ought to be getting?
Well, not for no, they go to the TLT committee for that. Correct?
That's
And
correct. That's what the council asked the
who
TLT committee
constitutes
to do
the
a few years
TLT
ago.
committee, may I ask? Who is the TLT committee?
They're all appointments from the council, Councilor Olson, like any other citizen advisory group.
And when do we get their report?
Well, now that if this supplemental budget gets passed by resolution, then there would now be a CTP fund for them to make some choices on, and then they would let you know their decision. That's how it's worked in the past.
And that fund would already be decided as to its size, correct?
We're asking that the historical size of $50,000 be reinstated.
Well, that's not the answer to my question. My question was, we've already decided exactly what the size of the fund is, and then the TLT committee decides who gets what little slice of that.
That is correct.
Okay.
Sir?
Another good reason to vote no on this resolution, is my way of thinking.
Councilor Novak.
So I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding here. Thanks for your patience. These new things, the CTP is new festivals, new events, and they're not to be funded until the ADA and the AVA and the Monteith House and the trolley and these things that are who we are fully funded, correct? Am I understanding that right?
So per the budget, Councilor Novak, that we're in this biennium period, this does not affect any of the outside agency partners. They've all received and will continue to receive the funding that was agreed upon and given to them during the biennial budget period, okay? What we're saying now is, in addition to that, typically in the past, we would have funded with transient lodging tax dollars, a CTP grant fund, but had pulled back from that during COVID because we were trying to scrimp and save everywhere we could. But now that we had this unexpected starting balance, we're saying let's use, the recommendation is to put that back into the CTP fund, which was at zero at the beginning of this biennium, in order to award those grants via the TLT committee.
But
So
now-
everybody else is funded exactly as was promised and agreed upon.
Yes, with a shrunken budget because of the COVID problem, correct?
No, actually, I think we loaned them from the Economic Development Fund $100,000, I believe it was, or 130. We were going to be taking some of that money and paying that loan off, so they don't have to worry about that anymore. Is that correct?
I'm worried about
That's correct.
ADA and ADA.
So am I. I mean, I'm a liaison for that committee, and Councilor Novak is on ADA liaison. So what I understand from Manager Sherry is that part of that is going to pay off that loan that we loaned them. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that stabilizes that, gets rid of that debt that they owe us as a city because we loaned it to them. So, and they're gonna fund it as before. So I'm comfortable now from my mind.
Two questions.
I'm not.
Again, same topic. So the funds that the AVA and ADA had been receiving pre-COVID, I am fine with your CTC thing as long as those levels are moving back up to where they were. If AVA and ADA, my request and my thought is we need to fund our own tourism collaborators, the ADA and the AVA, back up to their original pre-COVID funding. And I hope, I trust, and I guess this is a question as well, I hope the TLT has been meeting on a regular basis, unlike CARA and some of the other citizen advisory groups. They have been meeting, have they not?
Councilor Novak, I think you had two questions there.
Yes, sir.
And I think I'd respectfully defer the TLT allocations back to you, the council. Typically, those decisions are made during the budget cycle, which has already been done and adopted, and we're not proposing any change to that at this point, none whatsoever. To your second question, sorry, I see you hesitating, but to your second question about the the TLT committee, one of their primary purposes historically has been to make decisions on the use of the CTP funds, which have not been in existence for the last 2 years. So this actually restores some of their main value to the community in terms of evaluating impact of dollars for tourism events and the kind of events that bring visitors to our community. So this would be a good reason for them to meet and allocate some of those dollars.
Okay, thank you. Final question, I think, on this topic for me, and I appreciate everyone's patience.
So
This is the supplemental budget, and I'm in favor of passing it, but I just want a reassurance that we don't have to have another supplemental budget in order to bring the ADA and the AVA back up to their previous level pre-COVID. I think they're down from what they were, and I just want to ensure when I pass a supplemental budget here that the ADA and the AVA are being taken care of and they're back up to their pre-COVID level. Please.
Thank you. Counselor Smith was first. Counselor Smith.
I think this is another example of misunderstanding terms. AVA and ADA have been receiving the same percentage of TLT funds as they always have. The amount in those funds was down during COVID. So the totals associated with those percentages were smaller. I don't believe we've made any adjustments to the percentages of TLT funds that those two agencies receive. It's just that there's less money in the piggy bank.
Well,
That's a great explanation.
Counselor Smith, that is technically correct with one caveat, and that was an agreement we had with any of those agencies who receive, or partners, I could call them. They're not really agencies of the city, but outside partners, that should funds rise higher than anticipated, there would eventually be a cap. Even though it's a percentage base, there'd be a cap. And the agreement was, and of course the council approved this at the time, was that should we get extra funds, which it's looking good right now, we'd actually have a chance to build reserves, for example, and have a bit of a buffer, which hadn't been in place for almost 5 years. And also it gives you a chance to make decisions about that additional revenue, should it come in, and hopefully it continues to do that during the next budget cycle. So that's correct.
Thank you.
Counselor Olson, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
I'd like to ask a question. Does our whole financial situation go to hell if we don't pass this tonight?
If we pass a supplemental tonight, then we don't have the authority to spend the services fee or the other appropriations that we're trying to make.
So if we waited a month, then we would be able to do it. So in the meantime, are we totally stuck and can't do anything? I don't think so. And so what I'd like to do, I'd like to move to table this until we can have a report on our TLT funds and how they're being distributed.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I can wait until you get a second or not for the motion.
No, okay, we have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
I have another question. I appreciate, is it okay to ask another question?
Go ahead.
I appreciate Counselor Smith's explanation that the percentage hadn't changed, and I know we capped it. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, reserves are good, but can we remove the cap so that if more comes in, they get more? Is that possible?
Mayor, I think I can, hopefully I can
Go
help.
ahead, Director.
So Seth sets the allocations according to a policy for the use of transient lodging tax funds that the council passed. So that defines the percentages in the cap concept. That was what was used to establish the budget for this biennium, which we're in, and we're almost halfway through. So what Gina is asking for is a supplemental budget for the entire city budget that will help us be able to appropriate, which in my mind means spend, the money that we currently cannot spend because it was not originally budgeted in the right place. So it's important that the supplemental budget gets passed, to Councilor Olson's point, for all of those reasons. The transient lodging tax policy is an issue that the council can discuss whenever you would like to discuss that. But the policy was what defined the budgeting process for this
Correct.
biennium. So the budget was developed in accordance with the existing policy. And so it would be a little bit inappropriate to try to direct staff to change the budget at this point without having a discussion on the larger policy, which took a lot of time, if you'll all remember the last time we did it. So that's my 2 cents, is they're related but separate issues. The supplemental budget is one thing that Council or Director Yeager needs to get passed for us to be able to spend appropriately. The transient lodging tax and how those funds are spent are always a hot topic. And I think we can come back and discuss that again, notwithstanding Councilor Olson's objections, which I understand.
Thank you. So we have a motion to table. Do I have a second? Go ahead, Councilor
This
Johnson.
has nothing to do with AVA. I just wanted to ask, with the $1 million coming in that we approved with Resolution 7084, and thank you, by the way, for sending that, nothing has been decided on how to spend that, correct?
I don't think so. At this point, I don't think a decision has been made on how to spend that. I
Okay,
think that's
because the
gonna come
money
up with-
actually just came
That goes
in.
to the CDC, right? Community Development Commission?
It goes to community development, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nothing's been, I mean, because we need to discuss that in,
Right,
so
we're
the
just
CDC
appropriating, I'm
we make-
sorry.
We make a recommendation to the council, right? CDC?
CDC should make a recommendation to the council once they
Correct.
they deliberate if they would come in.
Right.
I believe we're getting off topic.
We are getting off topic, so
Well,
I'd like
is
to
there-
close it, so that's a whole different discussion.
Well,
And so,
no-
and no more questions on this. We've talked about this enough.
Not on TLT, but I have 2 supplemental budget questions, if I may ask them, that are not TLT, ADA, AVA related,
Well,
but they are under supplemental budget.
We've had a motion to table, so let's get that solved
Okay.
and then move on.
Well,
Do we have a motion to table the supplemental budget? Do I have a second? All those in favor? No second? Okay, thank you. Now, go ahead and ask your question, please.
all right, and I hope I'm not misunderstanding Director Yeager. I just saw 2 things that I believe I saw under supplemental budget, and so if I'm out of line, just, correct me. But there were 2 things that I was wondering about. One says, let's see, pardon me. One says economic development activities, $180,000, and I was just curious if you could tell me something about what that is, because $180,000 is a lot of money, I think. And the other one was increase park maintenance appropriations by $895,600, which again, that to me is a huge amount of money. And so, and this might be out of line, but I'm wondering, have we ever considered using private sector to help with maintenance in our parks? And I don't want to get off on a big, I read this and we're looking at passing this. I'm wondering, with things being as tight as they are, if we've ever looked at other ways of doing things that might save us money.
Go ahead.
The $895,000 that's in park maintenance is part of the services fee that was originally
Okay.
approved back in August.
Okay.
The $180,000 in economic development, $50,000 of that is a collaborative tourism. $130,000 of that is for a reserve in economic development activities. So if we were to enter into another pandemic, if we were to see the shortfalls in revenue that we did, this would help smooth out our obligations to our outside partners or to other tourism-related activities.
Okay, so it's reserves, it's not specific activities, it's reserves in case another crazy thing happens.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So would the council would like to make a motion to pass this supplemental budget?
I move that we pass the supplemental budget as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All
Second.
those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilors Novak,
Yes.
Bartholomew,
Yes.
Kopsinski,
Yes.
Johnson,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Olson.
No.
The motion passes 5-1, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Gabe. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. You'll have questions. I'm sure the council members with questions will come and see you. find my agenda now. There it is. Next on the agenda is adjustments to the system development charges, connection charges, and post-construction stormwater quality program fees. And Director Bailey, I believe, is going to speak to us on this topic.
It's actually Rob Emmons, and he's joining us remotely. I'm on the next one.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do my public hearing thing. Next on tonight's agenda is a public hearing for the adjustments to system development charges, connection charges, and post-construction stormwater quality fees. Directions on how to testify and submit written materials were published on the council agenda. I declare the public hearing open at 6:59 p.m. Does our staff have a report?
Yes, Mayor Johnson, thank you. The public hearing tonight, we are considering the annual adjustments or increases to the public works fees. I don't have a formal presentation as we discussed this in detail at the May 23rd council work session maybe 3 weeks ago. However, for the record, I do want to state that the public works fees include system development charges, being water, wastewater, and transportation SDCs, and then the city utility connection charges. Included in that is the post-construction stormwater quality fee. So there are two adjustments or two increases we are proposing this year. One is the inflationary increase, and that for this year is 12%. That's based on the Engineering News Record construction cost index from April of last year to April of this year. And the second increase or adjustment we are considering tonight is the third phase-in step for water and wastewater SDCs. I also want to clarify or call out that there is a difference in the water SDC amount shown in the council packet tonight. It's different than what I presented at the council work session on May 23rd. I made a mistake on the at the council work session. I showed the incorrect fee. The correct fee is shown in the council packet tonight, and that difference is about a $200 increase in the water SDC for a single family home. So I just want to point out that's not a very big increase given the total aggregate SDC charges for a single family home. But I did want to point out that there is a difference between what was presented at the work session and what is included in the council packet tonight.
So you're talking about exhibit on page 29?
Let me dig there real quick.
Exhibit A?
I'm paging down to make sure I'm looking at the same thing that you are. It is the one that is shown on page 24 of the council packet. On attachment A, page 24, the total water SDC is $4,010. And what I presented at the work session was $3,801.
So what we have on page 24 is correct?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. That's what I've got.
That's what I have too.
So that is all I had tonight. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor Johnson, and would be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, so we have people signed up? Okay. John Robinson. So the staff report, written materials Written materials are submitted there's no written materials submitted. I now call upon those who registered to speak, and that would be Mr. John Robinson, would be the first step. And then after him will be Mr. Mike Quinn. Good evening. Is it on? Speak directly into it. I can.
No.
No.
Hello.
Yes,
Just
Pat.
move the whole
Okay.
thing closer to you.
Sorry, green light. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those numbers and the examples that were on page 24 and 25. And on those examples concerning the SDC fee increases, the water SDC fee that we were just talking about increases $616 over what it was. The wastewater SDC will increase $800, and the transportation SDC will increase $277. So the Parks SDC fee is not part of this discussion. It's separate, but it's also an SDC fee that has to be paid on new development. So just those three fee increases that are in this proposal tonight increase the SDCs $1,693 over what they currently are. That data is kind of missing from the report. You kind of got to do the math like I just gave you in order to figure out what those numbers are. Likewise, there's percentages are missing of this increase that the city is asking for. So, and according to the example provided in the, I think it's a footnote, these are typical SDC fees for a single family home. The individual increases, an 18% increase for water SDCs, a 19% increase for wastewater SDCs, and a 6% increase on the transportation SDC. So currently we're, if you listen to the news, we're around 8% inflation, and two of those fees are clearly in excess of what we're experiencing today as just individuals. I'd like to present to you the NAB, NAHB. The NAHB is a National Association of Home Builders. They happen to have put out a 14-page report this year, 2022, and they call this report a priced out estimate. And so I don't have a copy for you. I'm going to read from it, but you can Google it and find it on the internet. It's very easy. Basically, what this report shows is how higher prices affect housing affordability. I want to read a couple of excerpts from that so I don't mess it up. So the 2022 United States estimates indicate that for a $1,000 price increase in the median price of a new home, and NAB has determined the median price of a new home in the U.S. is $412,000, $412,505. So a $1,000 price increase in that median new home price would price out 117,932 households of the market. So as a benchmark, 87.5 million households, that's roughly 69% of all U.S. households, are not able to afford a new median price home. Okay? So 69% of the U.S. can afford that home, which is 87.5 million households. 39 million, or about 31% of 126 million households, could afford to buy a new medium-priced home at that $412,505 in 2022, this year. The $1,000 home price increase would price out 117,932 households for the market for that home. So what that means is these are households that could qualify for the mortgage, but the minute you throw an extra $1,000 on that price, they can't qualify. That's what that number is, the 117,932 households. And so those are national numbers. That's a national price of a home, and that's a national number of how many people. Fortunately, the NAB breaks it down, and so it's really interesting data, and I want to present that. And so the first thing they do is they break it down by state, and they also break it down by metropolitan area. So in the state of Oregon, the entire state, the new median price of home, $533,740. Okay? income needed to qualify for that home is $122,608. The households who could afford that home, this is the entire state of Oregon, 355,490 households can afford that home. The households who can't afford that home, 1,322,331. Now, the priced out figure for the state of Oregon on that home is 1,073. So again, there's 1,073 households in the state of Oregon that could afford the home. The minute you raise the fee $1,000, they can't afford the home. Okay? So these are real people, real families. Fortunately for us, NAB also breaks this down by metropolitan area, and when I was reading this report, I found Albany in here. They combined us with Lebanon. So on the list, the metropolitan area, it says Albany/Lebanon, Oregon. Here's the numbers for our community, basically. Median new price of the home, $477,331. Income needed to qualify, $114,312. Households who can afford that home, again, this is Albany, Lebanon, 5,477. Households who can't afford that home, 46,871. The priced out number, 32. So there's 32 households in our communities that when we add $1,000 to the price of that median price home at $477,331, they can no longer qualify. I just want to make a point that those are real people, real households. This is how these numbers play out. So hopefully you can see the impact that just $1,000 price increase in the cost of a single-family home makes. The proposal before you increasing SDC fees by $1,700 would price out more households than our example in the community provided by the NAB study. I'm not a statistician. This was a $1,000 price increase. What you have before you is $1,700. We don't know what the parks is going to be because that's a separate discussion. Let's say it raises another $300. Now we're at $2,000 additional, okay? I don't know if these numbers are linear. In other words, if we could extrapolate and say there were 32 households that got priced out, now we're pricing out 64. I don't think it's that way. I think it's different, and it might be we priced out 100 or 150. I'm not a statistician, but just presenting the data so you can see it. In summary, I believe the result of passing these SDC fee increases will result in more households being priced out of purchasing a home. So I believe if you care about housing affordability, a more balanced approach is needed to ensure that growth is paid for. I'm all for that, but without pricing out more households out of the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
The price of the house is 400 and some thousand that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's their number for Albany area, $477,331.
Now, is that an average price or is that a
They're calling this a median new home price.
median?
Yeah,
Is
new home.
the size of the home
Yeah.
listed?
If you go out, Dick, if you go out to South Albany, past where I live, to that Henderson Farm where Lennar Homes is built,
Henshaw.
they have Henshaw, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They have a big sign up there and it says from the 400s.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that those homes are going to be in this price range.
So there's an equal number higher than that and an equal number lower than that. For the
Yes,
median.
according to the
Right.
definition of median.
And so with the tiered SDCs, they'll be based on the size of the house, the square footage of the home. Have we talked about that in this?
Well, according to what I read in the report, it says a standard single-family home. But you're right. If you're going to a sliding fee or they're set up based on square footage, then those SDCs will be higher or lower. Correct.
Yeah, we haven't passed, I don't think we've passed that yet.
No, Mayor, that is in development. It'll come back.
So it's going to come back? Okay.
So how big a house is that median house?
I don't have any.
Yeah, I didn't
in
see
here.
it in here.
In this report, I mean, this is a 14-page report.
Yeah, but you're a builder. What would I get for a $470,000 house?
You could get a
2-bedroom?
2,400 square foot home, maybe 3-bedroom and a den, 2-bath,
Couple car garage?
2-car, maybe 3-car garage. You're going to get a really small lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're all small these days.
Yeah.
But you're likely to get a small lot rather than living in an apartment house.
Correct.
Okay. Well,
All right, thank you, John.
interesting. Data, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mike Quinn?
I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I'm actually, I'm going to ask the mayor, I think that we need to, at this time, to cancel. You need to forego in that having a affordable housing task force. It ain't going to work. I think everybody knows that. But I do know, and I want to find out why, you know, that staff, I mean, we're paying a lot of money out of staff out of your federal money and that you're getting the 368,000. I'm just saying if we're going to continually index, and we're talking really short order on all this. Back when I was, you know, in our heyday of building here, and I was president of the Home Builder Association, state director, national director, and stuff. Across the United States, we don't even have programs like this. Des Moines, Iowa, you can go in there for $525 and get a building permit and nothing else. I'm just saying that we've got all this staff doing all this, Rob's doing all this figuring and stuff to try to bring this back, and just John just gave you the verse of the United States. I'm hoping that everybody's listening, but I don't see how this task force, you know, we can throw confetti up, pop balloons, and say, hey, we're doing something. We're not. And I think you know it, Alex. Not wanting to throw anybody under the bus, but we've texted each other. This is what we signed on for. We're all writing a plan, and I think that I just heard it over here that we're trying to get, you know, a sliding scale situation. I mean, I've heard some different things on tax. I would go ahead and say the rich home buyer versus what you call an affordable housing home buyer, which is $477,000 one, the medium average. You guys have preached medium average income for years here. So let's take this into context of what John just said. And what are we going to do? We're just going to raise these. It would have been nice to have like I say, back in the day, we had 90-day notice, clear back to March, that all this stuff was coming, so we could kind of move on it as our group, our building group and stuff. And now it's just like, here, we're going to do it, we're going to vote on it, and that's it. So I just don't see how, as a mayor, you can allow this housing task force to keep on going when it's dead on arrival.
Well-
Staff has already made their mind up on what they want to do. I've talked to a couple of them in and up above and stuff. You guys are literally, I'm playing with you. You already know what you're going to do. You know, people like me and other people, you'll kind of suffice the situation that, well, you know, if you tell Quinn this, you know, maybe he'll go with it. You're coming at us with all these fee increases and stuff. And it's like, I have to explain that to my customer. I don't pay a dime of it. I told you this 2 weeks ago. I don't pay a dime of it. Okay? The customer does. But I've got a conscience and I like to sleep at night. I have to tell the customer, well, why are we paying $20,000 in fees and stuff? I have to explain that. You guys have to explain it and that to the people and that when you're getting reelected. You know, of why this is so expensive and so out of. You just can't. I mean, I have never seen a tax that everybody. You know, when things go up, I mean, our building department has excess amount of money in the rainy day fund. I don't see nobody preaching about bringing that down and maybe cutting the building inspection fees. We could talk about that, but I'm not going to because that's out of probably here. But take what John's saying, take what I'm saying, and I think that we need a cooling off. This housing task force, you should ace it now because I think staff is already going towards, you know, like a CET tax, you know, or something bigger in that on, like I say, if somebody is fortunate enough to build a bigger house, because you're not going to find the 1,200 foot dingers anymore. It's cost prohibitive.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any comments for Mr. Quinn? I declare the public hearing closed at 7:18. Is it 7:18? Council discussion? Council Novak?
Just a comment. I think it's just a a sad state of affairs. You know, it's a really difficult time in this world and in this country, and here locally where we live and pay our bills and try to survive with spiraling inflation and spiraling gas prices and all these things that affect us in a million different ways. I just think it is a very sad state of affairs, and I feel for people who can't afford a median home. I feel for, you know, I have a constituent who came to me and said, with regard to, let me grab my glasses, that, you know, we have opportunities to help people, to give them a discount, you know, but some of the builders and developers and people who own apartment homes, for instance, they don't get a price break on these increases. And I think I've wandered out of SDCs into other things that are going up, other rates that we're being told we need to raise because of inflation. And, you know, part of me thinks because of inflation, we should do everything we can not to raise fees. People are strapped. Maybe some people aren't, you know, but many folks are. And I should bring it back to the constituent who said, as someone who owns apartment buildings, you know, he doesn't get a price break on the price breaks. If anybody gets any kind of you know, can pay for low income or can apply for low income, that doesn't apply to someone who owns an apartment complex, and he has no choice but to raise the rent on his renters, and it comes. It just seems like everything that people do in an attempt to help low income or to get through this hard time, whether you're low income or, you know, you don't have a home, you live in an apartment, everything just makes it go up. Every time we raise a rate and you're thinking, well, it's not going to affect that person, it totally does. And I don't know what the solution is, but I think we need to find solutions, and we can't just keep raising everything because no one is going to be able to afford to live in Albany, which was a very livable place at one time. I mean, I grew up here, and both my parents worked, but it's just crazy. This is worse than the 1970s with the gas lines and all that. This is just we need to do what we can to lower costs.
Thank you, Councilor Novak. Any other councilors have questions? Okay. Will the councilor like to make a motion?
Procedural question. We've got 8 different proposed resolutions.
Yes, there's 8 of them on there.
Yeah. Do we do them one at a time,
City Attorney?
or can we do them as a group?
There we go.
The resolution, so.
Yeah, the resolutions, they they don't need to be read. However, if one were to be challenged, it'd be better procedurally if we have one public hearing, but it'd be better to pass each resolution separately, so that if some of them are, because we may have some that pass and some that don't. So.
Well, I'll go ahead and read the first one, then let somebody else take over so I don't get hoarse.
Wait, what's that?
We don't have numbers.
Okay. I move we approve resolution number 1 on page 28.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
Resolution number 1, this is the water system development charges.
Yes.
On the agenda, page 28.
Yeah.
Those opposed say no.
I think I'm a no,
Well,
just because of how it affects people.
Can we have a roll call then?
Do the roll call, Gabe, please.
All right. For water system development charges, Councilors Bartholomew,
Yes.
Kopsinski,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Novak.
And if I don't vote yes, then it comes back on ratepayers, or how does this?
No.
I'm sorry, I need to know what I'm doing, and I need clarity. This is a
No, it
water
doesn't.
system development charge for new development, correct?
Development.
Yes.
Yeah, for new development.
This is
So,
not utilities, it's development.
right, this is not the utility, this is the development charge, and those gentlemen were addressing that. And,
Yep.
oh, I just feel like it's a lose-lose proposition. I'm really sorry. I just, on the one hand,
Counselor,
Can I have
it's tough decision, but it does not need unanimous vote to pass.
I know. So even if I say no, it's still going to pass, and I can say no for X amount of reasons, and
Right.
Thank you.
And then-
Is there a no?
yes, sir, I'm going to vote no.
Okay, thank
With
you.
all due respect to everybody who's,
The resolution for water system development charges passes 5-1.
We have a motion for the next one?
All right, I would move to pass the number C2, revising wastewater system development charges.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
wastewater, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, forgive me, but I'm going to vote no. And
Have a roll call?
Would you like another roll call, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
We're probably going to have to do it all the time.
We don't need to do a roll call if we only have one dissenter, but
Okay.
if you would like one, I'm more than happy to do it
Okay,
every
so-
time.
So we had, those opposed say no.
I mean,
I said no.
It's 5-1.
it's 5-1.
Typically, Your Honor, if someone questions about, we can do a roll call. Otherwise, I'll probably assume that most of them will be 5-1.
Thank you. Next one is transportation system development charges. Your motion?
I would move for C3 to be passed, revising transportation system development charges.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Motion passes. Next one is revising connection charges for street connections.
I move we approve the resolution as written.
Your motion?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Motion passes. Next one is revising connection charges for sewer connections.
I would move that we pass a resolution for revising connection charges for sewer connections.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Next one up is revising connection charges for water connections.
I move we approve the resolution revising water connections.
All those in favor say
Second.
aye.
Second.
Excuse me, is there a second?
Yes. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Revising connection charges for storm connections.
I would move to pass the resolution revising connection charges for storm connections.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, number 8 would be revising post-construction stormwater quality program permits fees.
I move we approve the resolution revising post-construction stormwater quality program permit fees.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Okay. Now,
Thank you very much, council. I know it's a tough decision, but we were elected to do those things. And so I greatly appreciate your feedback and also your comments as well. Next is the utility rate adjustments for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. Director Baylor will be presenting to us.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen if I can make it work. Okay. Success. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do have a short presentation on utility rates because I presented this back in March, so it's been some time, and I want to refresh your memory and also provide a brief overview of our presentation for March for those who may be watching the meeting at home. If anyone's interested in the full presentation, then you can find it on the city's website at the March 7th City Council work session. So this is a discussion we have with council every year as a review of funding for the 3 water utilities and a discussion of forecasted rate changes for the next fiscal year and the following 5 years. There's a comprehensive discussion of these topics in your memo, which I'm sure everyone read in great detail. It's really long, and I understand that, but if you have any questions, please let me know. The process of setting rates is really the end result of council action and direction. The council deliberates and establishes a level of service that they want to achieve in each utility, and then staff goes and does work and research what is needed to accomplish that level of service within the funding that is available. When the funding is not adequate to reach or maintain the level of service, we discuss that with the council and then we'll find the best path forward. Today's recommendation on rates is the department's presentation to you of what we think we need to continue to accomplish the level of service that you have asked us to provide. In the water utilities, revenue goes to one of 3 categories of expenditures. Our first obligation is to pay our debts. So first we allocate funding toward debt payments. Next, we keep the existing systems working and functional. So the second thing we allocate money toward is O&M costs. The funds we have remaining are put into capital programs. It's important to remember that if we find ourselves without enough funding to meet our capital needs, then we have to define the options to overcome that funding limitation.
Excuse me, Director Bailey?
Yeah,
I should have opened the public hearing for this.
okay.
So I can fix it now, right, Sean? Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is a public hearing for utility rate adjustments for 2022 and 2023. Directions on how to testify will submit written materials or publish on the council agenda. I declare the public hearing open at 7:31. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to continue. So as I was saying, the last thing that we put funding towards is capital projects. And if we don't have adequate funding for capital projects, then we have to try to find the funding to accomplish those needs. So in the debt category, we try to accomplish our work without taking on additional debt, but sometimes the needs are beyond our ability to pay for things as we go, and we have to seek other options. Anytime we have a need in the utilities that exceeds our ability to pay for it, we find the least cost solution. In some cases, we break expensive projects into multiple phases that can be accomplished over time. That only works with projects that actually can be phased. And when we have multiple years to complete the whole project, for instance, the Cox Creek Interceptor we've talked about a lot is a good example of that. When we can't find a solution that allows us to get work done within our standard revenue, then we have to work with the finance department to find funding options. In the past, that's typically either meant issuing bonds or applying for a low-interest loan through the State Revolving Loan Fund. We currently have 3 sources of debt in the water utilities. In the water fund, we have an existing debt that was taken out in order to build the Albany-Millersburg Water Treatment Plant and some other associated facilities. The annual payment towards that debt is $1.92 million, and it will expire in 2034. In the sewer fund, we have 2 loans. The first is the loan that was taken out to fund the construction of the Albany-Millersburg Water Reclamation Facility and Talking Water Gardens. This loan was refinanced a few years ago to take advantage of better rates. The current annual payment for that is $4.7 million, and it will be paid off in 2032. The final debt obligation is another Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan that we recently took out to build the improvements to the Riverfront Interceptor that we made, including a new lift station and force main on Water Avenue near Montgomery Street. That project was completed last year. The annual debt payment for that project is $615,000, and it will be paid off in 2041. Once our payments for debt are considered, our next obligation is to pay for operation and maintenance activity. O&M includes personnel, materials, capital maintenance, and regulatory requirements. Timely and sufficient investment in operational needs can save money in the long run by reducing the risk of system failure, emergency repair, or regulatory noncompliance. I'm not going to go into all the details of all the assets that I normally do on this presentation because that would add a lot of time. So I'll just give you some numbers and trivia for you to keep in your mind. In Albany, we have 690 miles of pipe that we have to keep clean and in good repair 100% of the time. We have 2 drinking water treatment plants and 1 wastewater treatment plant. We have about 7,000 manholes, plus another 6,800 water valves. We have a total of 18 pumping facilities, most of which have multiple pumps that have to work all of the time. We have almost 400 stormwater quality facilities, which are the vegetative facilities you see that provide some treatment to stormwater runoff. There's a whole lot more than that, but there's just an overview, and I won't take all of your time to describe all of the work that goes into keeping all of that running. So once we budgeted for debt and O&M expenses, then we use the funding that's left for capital spending. About 10 years ago, we discussed with council the appropriate funding targets for water and sewer capital. In more recent years, we've discussed a very small capital funding target in stormwater, which will pay for the stormwater portion of street capital projects, which is about $400,000 a year. So why consider a rate adjustment? Every year we look at the 3 funds as compared to our revenue and expenditure targets, and we analyze where we are and what, if any, rate increase we would need to keep on target. Typically, there are 3 major reasons why we consider rate adjustments. Number 1 is inflation, which affects both operating and capital costs. As everyone knows, inflation is a little bit crazy right now. And it affects both our operating costs in terms of consumables such as fuel and chemicals, as well as the cost for capital projects, which have gone up significantly. Secondly, regulatory compliance also affects our expenses. All 3 water programs have overarching regulatory requirements that we must meet. These regulations are not static. They tend to grow over time. For instance, the number of pollutants we're required to sample for and treat to remove in drinking water program has grown over the years, and most recently was cyanotoxins were added to that list. We've never found cyanotoxins in our water, but we still have to sample and test for them regularly, and that has a cost. The last need is, of course, capital projects. There's a long list of capital needs in all of the water utilities, and part of responsible management of our infrastructure is planning for timely capital work to repair, replace, and expand our systems. So this slide contains the recommendations for sewer, water, and stormwater rate increases. 2% for both sewer and water. The sewer rate increase would go into effect July 1st, 2022. The water rate increase goes into effect January 1st, 2023. Both of those are only responding to inflation, and as you know, inflation is about 8%. We're only asking for 2%, which is not nothing, but we've managed to be quite efficient with our funding and achieve some operational savings, so that allows us to keep this rate increase as low as it is. We're also recommending a 17% increase in stormwater, which would be effective next March 1st, 2023. 17% is a large percentage, but the underlying dollar amount is low. This is a new fund, and compared to water and sewer, 17% does not equal as much of an increase as it would in those 2 programs. That rate increase is inflationary, but it also includes the ramp up to meet the funding we need to meet our MPDS permit requirements and provide that capital funding to relieve the street fund.
What is NPDS?
NPDS stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. Those are the types of permits that were issued under the Clean Water Act. These tables are intended to show what customers would pay. They show single-family residential customers, sewer, water, and stormwater. These calculations for sewer and water are based on a usage of 8 units a month, or 800 cubic feet. I'll just note that most of our water customers, our average water use is quite a bit less than that, but 8 is what is used statewide. So we use that number so that we can compare across other agencies around the state. You can see on this table the current rate and the increased rate for each utility. This slide shows the combined effect of the requested rate increases. We show this slide to demonstrate the total impact. However, it's important to note that these 3 rate increases go into effect at various times in the fiscal year. So all 3 increases would not be effective until the last one goes into effect, which would be stormwater in March of 2023. The combined increase would make the typical residential bill based on 8 units a month, $137.66 per month, or $4.59 per day, which represents an aggregate increase of 3.4% in total for the total bill. I want to show this table as well. One thing that changed from previous year presentations is that we now have the city services fee. I'm showing this table to show the monthly water rates in combination with the city services charge, even though the city services charge has nothing to do with water, sewer, stormwater. But previous councils have asked for the total monthly charges that people would see on their bill. So I'm just presenting this here to you so you can see the current water, sewer, storm rates plus the city services charge. The council has asked for this comparison of other jurisdictions, and so we've presented this table to you multiple times over the years. It has been updated to reflect our rate increases. Albany is 6th on this list for combined utility bills, and which puts us in the middle of our closest neighbors. This table does not reflect any changes that any of those other jurisdictions will be implementing over the year, and pretty much everybody implements annual rate increases. Next is a table of non-single family residential customers. This category of customers is really hard to describe because each one is uniquely calculated. But what we've done over the years is taken actual Albany customers and anonymized them to put them on this table. The only one that's not anonymous is City Hall. So to provide the council with examples of what some commercial and industrial customers might pay with these rate increases as compared to Salem, Corvallis, and Eugene. In Public Works, we maintain a 5-year forecast for all of our utilities. We use this information to plan future work in operations and our capital programs. Forecasting is not an exact science, and there are many variables that can influence the forecast, some of which I've listed here. Each of these vary us away from our assumptions either up or down, so that planning for next year may be more or less accurate depending on how these deviate from our assumptions. For example, water rate revenue can be quite dependent on the weather in the summer. Cooler, wetter summers tend to generate less water revenue due to reduced irrigation and outdoor use. Or another example would be we're estimating the cost of chemicals over the next year, which if this current year has been any example, we have guessed wrong. I can guarantee you that. They're highly volatile. So while we're making our best educated guess at how things will play out over the next 5 years, forecasting is not an exact science, and in the out years, of course, our forecasts are less reliable than in the near term. One of the things I want to show you before I get into the history of rate increases is this chart, which we present multiple times and ties into the SDC discussion you just had, but also affects rates. So what this chart is showing you is the sewer debt service payment. The top line, which is a dotted line, is the total debt service payment that we have to make in the sewer fund. The next line down, the dash and dot line, represents how much of the debt payment sewer ratepayers are paying, so the people that pay their bill every month. The third line, the dash line, is the portion of the sewer debt that SDCs are supposed to pay. When the debt was taken out, it was allocated to either current use or future use. Because, for instance, the example I use that I think is easiest to understand is the wastewater treatment plant. We built the wastewater treatment plant to have capacity for 20 to 30 years. We didn't build it just for the capacity we have today. So the cost of each component of that project were allocated to current use or future capacity. And the debt that was taken out to pay for that project, those same percentages were applied to that debt. So SDCs are supposed to pay for a portion of the debt that we took out to build the water reclamation facility. And that's what the dashed line shows there. The bottom line, which is the solid line, is the portion of this debt that SDCs are actually paying. You can see I've identified for next fiscal year, there's a gap between our available SDC revenue and the portion that SDCs are supposed to pay of about $500,000.
Chris,
That- Yes.
Chris, does that SDC contribution reflect what we approved for tonight?
It is based on the forecasted revenue that we expect to receive from SDCs next year, which would have included the increase. SDC revenue is really hard to predict.
Right.
Because it depends completely on development. So we basically take an average over the last 3 years. We add an inflationary increase to it, and that's what we use to forecast for our revenue for next year.
Thank you.
Over time, the SDC revenue that we have received has not been in amounts that are able to keep up with their fair share of debt payment. Years ago, we had a reserve of SDC revenue in the sewer fund that we used to pay for debt along with current SDC revenue we were receiving, but those reserves are gone. So for this year and moving forward, SDC revenue, we do not forecast to come in quantities that will fully pay its share of debt and for capital projects. So you can see the gap that exists, and the gap is growing over time. Ratepayer revenue will have to be raised more than would otherwise need to be raised in order to make up this gap. Every percent in sewer rate revenue is a little bit less than $200,000. It's around $160,000 for every percentage we raise sewer rates. $500,000, I'm not good at math, but I'm going to say roughly 3% that we have to have sewer rates higher than we would otherwise have to have them because we're not receiving adequate SDC revenue. So one of the things you did tonight with SDC for sewer is you approved moving to the next step on the 5-year phase-in of the higher sewer SDC, the full sewer SDC. That's very helpful because when our SDCs, when we're not charging the maximum allowable for our SDCs, then we are not recovering enough money to pay for these projects that have to be built. So the CCI increase is important because the costs for capital projects have gone up 12% over the last year. That's what that's telling you. The next phase, the next point on the 5-year phase-in is also important because we're getting to the point where growth is getting closer to fully paying its way. I hope that is clear. So I point this slide out because sewer rate increase is only 2%. But part of that, if we didn't have to have sewer rate revenue pay for the SDC portion of debt, we might not have to raise rates at all. That's the point I want to make in this chart. Okay, almost done. So I have a series of tables that show previous rate increases, the one that we're proposing this year, and then our forecast from the future. We're only proposing a 2% rate increase for this year. As I mentioned, even though inflation is quite high, we have adequate savings in our operational costs to keep the rate increase at 2%. In the out years, we've put 3.5%. Things are so volatile right now, we really don't know what the out years will be, but we will work to keep them as low as possible. Water rate increase is very similar, a little bit of a different history, but the forecast for the out years is very similar. This slide represents stormwater rate revenue. And when the council adopted the stormwater rate in 2018, we ramped it in over 5 years to get to our target of $1.4 million in 2018 dollars. So the rate proposal we're suggesting for next year for stormwater will put us in year 4, and that keeps us on track to meet our regulatory requirements and capital needs. Okay, so this is my last table. This shows the history of stormwater rates. As I said, we're going into year 4 of a 5-year ramp. We have one more year of 17%, and then we've put 12% in the out years, but really we'll have to completely recalculate that next year, and we'll have a better idea next year for you of the out years for stormwater revenue. Okay, so in summary, sewer 2% effective this July 1st, water 2% effective January 1st, and stormwater 17% effective next March 1st, which creates a total combined bill increase of 3.4%. Thank you for your patience as I went through that.
Council, any questions for Director? Councilor Johnson?
Thank you for that book.
No.
Just a question, like, we've got the debt, okay, and you say one is going to be paid off in 2032, then 2034, and then 2041.
Right.
When one is paid off, can those funds be used to pay off the next one, or are they all dedicated?
The in the water fund, so the water only has the one debt. When it's paid off, those funds cannot be used to pay off sewer debt.
Okay.
In the sewer fund, when we pay off the debt for the large loan that's due first, 2034, at that time, when we get close to making our final payment, what we will do is look at what to do with the remaining balance on that small loan that's only a $650,000 annual payment. And we'll probably come to the council with our plan to, can we do as you suggest and pay off that loan early, or what would be the best way to sort of restructure where we're spending our money in the sewer fund once that debt is paid off.
Yeah, because I was thinking that, okay, so if we can't use it, then we look at CIP projects to use it
Right.
forward. Is that correct?
And
Kind of.
yes, that's typically what happens. That debt amount is a large debt amount, $4.7 million payment a year. And so that's going to, we're going to do a bit of work to try to figure out what to do. That's a lot of money in our sewer fund to now have unencumbered, I guess I would say. So we would come back to the council with a discussion on
Okay.
how best to use that revenue.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselors over here? Counselor Novak?
Yes, thank you. At one point during the presentation, and I didn't want to interrupt you, you said you had on the screen a picture of what a utility bill would look like that includes the city services fee, and I didn't have that on my screen. So I don't know how I missed it, but I was looking at what you had on the screen at that time, and I didn't want to interrupt you.
Well, and I just stopped sharing my screen, so let me see if I can do this quickly again, because I don't remember the number off the top of my head.
Thank you. I know it showed with the other fees that the total was something like $4.49, and this is for a residential home, but I'm also considering other things. I happened to glance as you were showing the charts.
That's it right there.
So this would be the one, Counselor Novak. So this has the top bar this is for single family residential. So current rates plus the city services fee, and then the bottom row would be the increased rates plus the city services fee. With
Okay,
that total
so
dollar
that means
amount.
with the city services fee in it. I made the mistake of looking at the bottom line there where it says CSF and it's blank, and I was I just misinterpreted the chart. I thought that we had my page didn't have that, but it's up on top. Thank you very much. Sorry for that. The other thing is, as I was looking at where they broke down different types of entities that weren't single-family dwellings.
Right.
And I noticed in the restaurant and in your comparison chart, compared to Salem and other places, a restaurant here is likely to pay significantly more. And that's a personal interest, and maybe I shouldn't even mention it, but wow, that's a lot more that a restaurant in Albany is going to pay comparatively to another city. And I've heard from, forgive me but I've heard from people who say, I'm not talking about my home bill. I own properties. I have this and that and the other thing. And they said those rates are through the roof. So earlier, I actually looked at my water bill at the restaurant, my utility bill. And at first I was feeling really good because I'm like, hey, this is not too bad compared to last year. And then I remembered last year in August, we were open 4 days a week. Now we're only open 2 days a week. So my bill is almost the same, and that's not encouraging. And where you said, that happily, if because the council, minus myself, passed the SDC for development, and that will help. But as the gentleman pointed out there, and my fear is that we're going to have less development because of it, and you're going to have an even larger gap the next time you put this chart together. So I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer. I know you're doing everything you can with what you do, but it's, again,
Councilor
it
Novak,
feels-
I totally understand what you're saying, and so the, commercial and industrial water and sewer charges are just very different than residential. And, each city establishes those their own way. So for instance, there's a wastewater charge will have a strength-based charge depending on the use. And, there's just a lot of variables that go into those that don't go into residential calculations. What I can tell you is that we're starting a water master planning project, and part of that at the end of that project will be a review of the water rate structure in Albany. So maybe in about a year or so, we will be talking about water rate structure. And so if the council has input on us as to the structure of commercial, industrial, water and sewer rates, or not sewer, but water rates in particular, then we can have that discussion then and look at that. If the council wants us to change the way the rate structure works, we definitely can evaluate that and bring that back to you.
I appreciate that. With regard to independent homes, I've heard from constituents who've told me that their water bill in 2022 compared to 2012 is up roughly 50%. And that's part of why, in my heart, I just hesitate so much to approve, to assent to another raising of fees. And when you sort of, you're doing your spiel, and I get that, but is a little bit casual about, every year we raise these. And I'm like, why? Why do we have to raise them every year?
I will tell you that this council had, not this particular group of people, but the council has done rate reductions in the past, or zero rate increases in the past. It's not every year, but it's definitely happened.
That's encouraging. Thank you. That gives me hope that we might not always increase it
Yeah.
every year.
Our recommendation is based on what we feel we need to keep the system operating at the level that we all agree it should be operating at. And we would come and tell you if we could get it by with nothing, we would definitely tell you that. So
I appreciate that, Director. Final comment from me on this, as far as I know now, is I just remember reading in one of your reports the fact that personnel costs were were the leading driver. Personnel is the leading driver. And it's not like I want you to fire anyone, but I'm like, as a business person, is there any way to reduce the cost that's causing us to have to raise the rates on everything, even in a staggered way, which I appreciate that it's staggered. That helps, and it's got to help everyone. I just am desperate to find a solution that's less painful in a time when the spiel I gave earlier, I should have saved for now, because I'm talking about now the regular Joes going about their business who are paying more for gas, more for the groceries that are no longer on the shelves.
Councilor Novak, you're repeating yourself.
Yes,
so-
sir. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
that
thank you.
that should have come in here
Thank
where
you.
we're talking about this rather than SDCs, and I do apologize for that. It's all sort of related, though, so that's, I think, why my mind went there.
it is. And personnel costs are always a huge portion of the budget. I don't know by fund how much they make up in water, sewer, and storm. I should look that up for you. But, we do try to keep our personnel costs down, of course. A lot of it is two big factors. One, a lot of the costs are out of our everyday hands. And the second thing is, we recently did a classification and compensation study, and our positions are definitely not paid more than any of our comparable cities. So while people are expensive, I agree with you, people are expensive in government work, for sure. But we also need to be able to compete and attract people, and we are struggling with that right now in
Everybody
Public
is,
Works,
yeah.
I can tell you. So we want to be able to attract great people to come work for us. And if we're paying bottom of the barrel wages, we will not do that. So it's important that we be able to be competitive with our peers, and we are, more or less.
Thank you. Thank you. Counselor Olson had something.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, this chart that we have on the screen, do consultants determine the rates on these, or are those our own employees that determine those rates?
If I understand your question, this table was put together by our accountant, Public Works accountant. The original rate structure I wasn't a part of, but I believe it was the Water Task Force. Counselor Smith probably remembers years and years ago. Counselor Johnson might remember. There was a Water Task Force that established the rate structure that these are calculated from.
Well, I'm surprised at the wide variation between our
Sure.
rates and cities.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, we're over twice as high, but then another kind of business, we're
A lot less.
less. Yeah, so
It really is up to the individual city. So when you're setting your commercial and industrial rates, you're looking at how the impact, let's take, for instance, an industry that processes food. That wastewater from that industry is going to be very high strength, lots of organic material. And so you need to set your rates so that you're charging that industry appropriately for the burden they're putting on the treatment plant to remove that organic matter. Well, depending on your treatment plant, that burden could be quite different from city to city. So it is very individualized between cities. And these comparisons, the council likes to see them, but they are a little bit risky because you really can't compare Albany to Eugene, for instance, or Salem. Different treatment technologies, different cities, different rate structures.
Right. Okay. Do you have anything else, Counselor?
oh, I'm saying it well.
Okay.
That's fine.
So, so written materials submitted to the deadline, before the deadline, were forwarded to the council. Written materials were submitted by, so no written materials, correct? Right. Now we'll call on registered those registered to speak. First is John Robinson, second Mike Quinn, and then Joe Esker is the last. Sir, could you please keep it less, keep it brief?
Hello, I'm John Robinson.
Hi, John.
Hi there. Okay, stormwater rate increase. So I want to address what's on page 52. That is that the stormwater is being recommended to increase to 17%. And in the text then, if you read it, it would generate an estimated $485,000 in additional revenue, the increase. So this dollar revenue is larger than the estimated sewer water revenues, if you look at that, dollar-wise. So we've been told for a while that 17% sounds like a big number, but it's really a small number because the actual stormwater fee is so small. That's what's been told in years past about this fee. So I would remind you again that we're currently experiencing about 8% inflation, and this increase is double that. So real quick, a brief history for those council members who were not here 5 years ago. In 2017, when the stormwater tax was implemented, I objected to its application to my commercial property because my street has no stormwater collecting piping. In addition, my rainwater drains directly into the ground, not into a stream that flows to the river. In addition, on my particular property, I do not have any other city services at my property. I never received a city service bill, have no water and no sewer at that property. So the stormwater, when it came, was the only bill and was a new expense to my business. At the time, the city identified that there were approximately 1,120 properties like mine that only received a stormwater bill. Now, the number of properties like mine that are also not served by storm drains is still unidentified. There's a lot of those. So my belief at the time was that once the city finds a way into your pocket, they never leave and only want more and more money. I still feel that today. Case in point, in 2017, my beginning stormwater tax bill was $11.42 for my commercial property. Fast forward 5 years, and it's almost doubled to $20.19 now. This does not include the city services fee, which is another $9 for my business. There's rate projections on the screen there. They're on page 63 for the stormwater, the rate projections. And so if those rate projections hold true, I'll be faced with 2 more 17% increases and then 3 more 12% increases or more over the next 5 years. If I extrapolate that out, at that time, my bill would have almost doubled again to $38.82 monthly. And this is just for the rain that falls from the sky. So I remember I was admonished by one council member at the time of that public hearing that, well, this is just such a small amount of money. And other people had complained, and they were just going to pay it annually so that they didn't have to be agitated every month. And that council member suggested that I do the same. Just buck up and just pay it all at once so that I could get the ugliness over with. I didn't do that. I still pay it monthly. It's still ugly. I still don't like it. And I don't like the fact that in another 5 years, it's going to double to almost $40. We're currently in a recession, and some of you may be in denial about that. But I testified even a couple weeks ago about that for my business. We have all experienced the 8% inflation, higher fuel costs. Just on my way down here, diesel now for my construction business is approaching $6 a gallon. One of the last times I filled up my pickup truck, it was $175. I've got clients that call and want me to come over and look at a patio cover or repair, and we give free estimates. Well, those free estimates are like taking a $20 bill out of my pocket and placing it on your doorstep. And I'm not going to be able to do that anymore. I'm going to have to tell people no more free estimate. I'm going to have to charge a fuel charge to show up at your door. Something for the last 16 years we've not done. We've offered free estimates. All right? So this is real. Fuel costs, higher food costs, everybody's dealing with that. Families are struggling and watching every penny. Those on fixed income are especially hit hard. So I'm going to ask you to dial back the 17% fee on rainwater to something that will place less stress on the already overburdened tax-paying citizens of Albany. Now, I appreciate Councilor Novak's comments because as I sat and listened to Director Bailey's presentation, it also occurred to me that a lot of this tie-in between the SDCs and these service fees is there with that deficit that was $500,000 or whatever. And I wanted to point out, and I appreciate that Councilor Novak did point it out, but this tends to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's a double-edged sword. So the longer and higher you raise SDC fees, the less people can afford those houses, the less houses are built, the less businesses relocate here, maybe a fish processing business or whatever determines the wastewater is too costly for their business to deal with, rent too high, whatever. The less of that happens, the less revenue you have from SDC fees. And you can't predict SDC fee revenue. It's based on development, and nobody knows who's going to build how many houses next year, mid-rise, high-rise, office building, whatever. None of that is known. But the point is, the less of that that's built, the less revenue to the city, and then at some point, you're going to have to make it up with the city services fee increase or rate increases or whatever else. So it's a double-edged sword, and I just want to point that out. And it's a balancing act. That's what I'm asking for here is this. I'm addressing my comments specifically to the stormwater. That's the real burr in my saddle, and I think the 17% is just too much all the time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Council, any comments? Next up is Mike Quinn.
Mike Quinn. Okay. I'm really next on the storm water situation here. I think, Mayor, you've already had phone calls on this. I'm going to dispel everybody else. I have quite a few people that have clients up and down Quarry Road. No storm drains, no sewer, no water. Up a Spring Hillside doesn't have. But what really perplexes me, every one of these, and I've got pictures of every one of their phone calls here, that from January 1st, when it was $10.18, April 1st, it went up to $11.48. Then May 1st, it went up to $11.90. This is consistent with everybody, and Alex and that, our mayor, knows that. So I'm just kind of curious about, yes, I know that it's going to be next year, March and stuff, but I'm kind of wondering, why are we talking about it now then? Okay? And the water and sewer, the sewer, is a big, expensive thing, especially with a couple of failures that we had down there. Of course, food, we made a little bit of money. Don't know what happened to that. But Councilor Novak sat over here perplexed to the fact that, what can we do? Well, there's nobody up here years ago, except I'm looking at him now. Dick Olson knew a little bit about it, and that was the Water Task Force. We were kind of a sub part of it, and they had like approximately 12 people down here, and we got all these reports, and we kept on. One of the biggest things I asked was, why are we over-capacitizing this system compared to like the sewer? Well, we all know what it was. It was Pepsi. Actually, Steve Bryant tried to say it was Coca-Cola between here and Lebanon, but it was Pepsi. So one thing that maybe y'all don't realize, that Pepsi still owns the property out there off Ellenson Road. My cousin sold it to him. I'm sitting there going, you got a guy right now, and I hope you're listening, Seth Sherry. You should get on a plane and go, because I like Gatorade. Okay, and you should go down there and beg them, give any tax thing that you have to recoup the $25 million that we got that now is gone, went somewhere. I know $767,000 into the PERS program here. But what I'm saying is, we need to sell water here. And this debt, because I actually challenged before, I thought this debt should already be paid off and that on the water facility. Now I see why it isn't, even though that we finance it. And with Pepsi, they're going to have 2.6 million gallons a day coming, using. And then they were going to have about 750 to 775,000 into the sewer. We're making money if you guys would have kept Pepsi here and stuff like that. So to answer your question, you want to do something about this, let's get some jobs in Albany and make Mr. Sherry do his job. That's all I got to say.
I have one comment, and you already know it. Pepsi pulled the plug on it. It wasn't Albany.
It was
And it cost them money.
We stung them.
We did not.
Here's the thing. See, you don't know this, but like I said, my cousin owned the property, and he right now in that grass farms it right now for him. Very detailed situations and stuff like that. You don't. And we stung them by the 25 minutes. I think we would have waited probably 5 to 7 years. We could have had it. It's just like Lowe's. You don't know this. We kept on threatening we're going to sue Lowe's if they didn't keep their promise and stuff. We did not be suing people on that, just like we did Siemens.
I think a contract is a contract. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I know, but I don't know if you know contracts and stuff. So,
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mike. Next is Mr. Etzker. Give me just a second. Would anyone like to take a break? It's been over 2 hours and 12 minutes.
5 minutes?
Sir, we're going to take a 5-minute break and come back. Is that okay with you, Sean? Sean, is that okay? Okay, 5-minute break, please. I'm going to go ahead and reconvene. Mr. Esker is going to speak to us tonight.
Yes, thank you. My name is Joe Esker. I'm a resident of Albany, and you needed a regular Joe, so here I am. So thank you for the opportunity to make some comments this evening. So back in March,
Your microphone on,
heard
sir?
about-
Give me, sir. Can you, microphone?
Okay.
Better. Okay.
So back in March, I heard about the proposal to raise the utility rates. Got my copy of my bill here, and so I started looking into it. And I did speak to Steve LaRock, and got a lot of good information from him on city staff. And so he told me both about the work sessions that happen and the upcoming master plan that you mentioned, Director Bailey. So that was all good news. And so I ended up coming in and getting resolution 7042, which is the current rate structure and a bunch of other things, from the desk, and started doing a little research. And so I'm here today really hoping to get a placeholder at the planning table for a topic. And what that is that what I noticed is that on our bill, units of 100 cubic feet of water for the first 6 units are a fairly high price, and anything after that is a much lower price. And I'm wondering, where's the incentive for water conservation? So it really does seem like we're selling water, and the more you want, the better price you get. And that makes no sense in this day and age, because we're kind of in a situation where we've got a lot of water uncertainty ahead. We have historic droughts. We have smaller snowpacks. We don't know what's coming down the river. So it seems to me that we really need to be looking at strategies for keeping our water needs down and having them as low as possible in the years to come. So let's see. I do want to see a placeholder for some in future rate structure, an incentive for conservation of water. What is it going to be that we can do to use less water as individual householders or businesses, and just have it make economic sense? So toward that, I also noticed on resolution 742, there were a bunch of nice whereases, but there was no whereas about water conservation. So I really want to see that in the next one. And then a few specific comments that I have, that the optimal use of drinking water, of quality, let's see, get this right, of water treated to be drinking water quality, is to drink it, to cook with it, to do hygiene with that water. Flushing it down toilets makes no sense. Washing cars, washing concrete, all the household stuff is not, you don't have to have super treated water, and it's expensive to do that. And we build big facilities in order to do that. And certainly garden irrigation doesn't require that. But that's what we're doing with our drinking water. So we're putting it through huge facilities that are very costly, as all those graphs show, and we're not using it for that optimal use, and we're paying a lot for that. So I'm looking also for the city to take a more holistic view in the future at the management of the sewer and wastewater flows, the stormwater flows. I like things like the little urban park on Broad Alban, where you see that we're handling stormwater in some more innovative ways, and I hope that there's going to be more of that to come. I appreciated one of the other commenters here with regard to development, that if we're talking about fee for services, that if I don't have that particular service of stormwater management, then if we're going to be paying fees for it, we should be getting something for that fee. I would almost even like to see that if citizens are going to become more involved in wastewater management, in stormwater management, let's give them credits for doing things like stormwater gardens and things like that that are going to make what is on my property less impactful to what the city has to manage. So I'd just like to see more consideration for those kinds of things, and we can lessen the burden on our expensive wastewater and stormwater facilities, whatever they may end up being. It sounds like we're ramping up into that era. And then finally, let's see, I have a whole bunch of scribbled notes here, so I was very productive early in the meeting. That even though I realize that it's kind of a done deal that we've got this rate, and Scott did explain it to me that, yeah, for this year, it seems like things are kind of going to have to be what they are going to be. And again, I'm glad to see that we're going to revisit this with the water master plan. That perhaps even right now, a single rate would be more conservation oriented than this two-tiered rate, which is kind of bass-ackwards to me, where you are paying a high price for the first 600 cubic feet, and then you get to buy it for a little bargain price. So I think that even if you could rebalance it so that you're going to get your revenues out of even a single tiered rate, that could be considered. I'm certainly not going to hold it against you if you don't do that. Just an idea, and a crazy idea at that. But that definitely conservation-based rate structure is something I would love to see coming down the pike. And the other place where I think you can look at things, unless there are statutory or other accounting reasons not to, is the fixed costs involved in delivering these services versus the actual unit costs of the product that you're delivering. Years ago, I lived out in the Dumbeck Lane water district, and that's become a fiasco, I guess, but since I've left, and that's fine.
We're actually taking it over.
I'm sorry?
We're actually taking that over.
Yeah. But anyway, when I first got there, I was paying $100 base, just set fee, and it took them a couple of years to kind of get their act together, and I ended up being on the water budget review committee and talking in similar hand-wavy fashion to them too. And we eventually ended up with a $45. So we were able to say, okay, everybody's going to have a base charge of $45, and about half of that, or a little under that, was an actual loan that had been taken out in order to improve things. And then the other was these other fixed costs. And then it started making sense that I could conserve water on my property and actually save a decent amount of money. And so I'd love that to be built into what we're doing as residents of Albany. And I think that's it. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Esker, comments from the dais? So I really appreciate your conservation comments. I wrote a paper when I was in college in 2000, going to night school, that by 2045, the Third World War will probably be over water. That's what I estimated back then. That's accelerated. I mean, we're looking at Lake Mead, all the lakes are down. We're finding all kinds of things in the bottom of lakes. This earth can't sustain, it can't sustain more than 10 billion people or 9 billion people. And we're rapidly approaching that. And so, yeah, I do appreciate your comments on water conservation. And I don't like watering grass. My grandfather taught me when I was young, that's the biggest waste of money that Americans deal with, because you could be growing food with that land versus watering some pretty grass. Golf courses to me are another waste of resources. So water's a big deal. And the Third World War will be fought over water. So in my estimation. Any other comments, Council? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Mr. Mayor. I grew up in California in the Central Valley and attended UC Davis and used to have a lot of interesting conversations with our local farmers who a lot of my relatives were.
I was raised in Imperial Valley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was, not only was it hot, it evaporated a lot of water. It evaporated a lot of water. So I do appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, next is I'll close the public hearing at this time. Council, it's time for our discussion on this topic. And the time is 8:28. Councilor Kopsinski.
Hey, I move we approve resolution number 1, setting rates for wastewater system use on page 65 of our packet.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
Say again.
No.
Next on the agenda is setting rates for stormwater management services.
I move we approve the resolution setting rates for stormwater management services.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
I move we approve the resolution setting rates for water use.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Thank you, council. Thank you for the public comment. I really greatly appreciate it. Next up on the agenda is business from the public. Directions on how to testify and submit written materials were published in the council agenda. No one has submitted written material to tonight's meeting. However, 3 people have signed up to talk with us. Is there more?
Are they still here?
Who was that? Oh, Joe Esther. Okay, thank you. So I have Lisa Grotto is here. She's here. Lisa Grotto's first. Carol Davies will be coming on virtually, and then Cypress Clark. Did he cancel?
We never heard back.
Never heard back. So I'll cross that one off for now. Lisa, please. And good to see you, Director.
Good evening. Lisa Grotto, Executive Director of the Albany Downtown Association. Thank you for letting me speak this evening. I just wanted to do a quick downtown update. The first thing I want to do is thank Mayor Johnson, Peter Troutson, and Sophie Diecast for attending our building and business owner mixer. We host these quarterly to encourage collaboration between building and business owners and also to make connections with our city partners. Sophie reported that she had 5 assignments from people that attended and would be following up with those requests from building and business owners. So it seemed quite productive, and that was held at Mike and Karen McLean's loft, which is above the Downtown Association, and it's a 4,000 square foot loft that'll soon be available on Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
They are also the owners of Spring Hill Cellars Winery in North Albany. I also wanted to do a very big thank you to the Albany Police and Albany Fire Department for help with the situation on Saturday in downtown. I received a text from a building owner, a business owner that was a little upset by someone climbing a tree and was concerned for their safety. And I directed them to the police department for assistance, and that was provided. And I appreciate that that was resolved in a safe manner. Also, I wanted to bring your attention to the flower baskets, which were hung on May 15th, seem to be thriving and are growing nicely around City Hall as well as through the city. There's over 100, and those are paid for by sponsors, donors, some TLT funds, and our membership. The other thing was to let you know that the newsletter has come out as usual. And our headline story, which you may be able to see or not, is that the Albany Downtown Association was awarded the $200,000 grant from the Main Street Grant, and we are thrilled to be partnering with the Bennett's on the project to move Sybaris to the Oregon Electric Railway Station. So
Yay.
I'm sure one of us will be back with updates on that throughout the summer. And beyond that, I think I don't know, I've got time a tiny bit So we had a couple more historic businesses that were listed. No Delay is at 54 years, and Awesome Defer Funeral Home at 60. And just wanted to remind people that if there are numbers on your parking spaces, those belong to people that pay for them, and we appreciate other people not to park in them so those people can get to work on time. And other than that, I'm just going to give you back your time and invite you to the kickoff for the Passport Program, which is a collaborative effort between the Visitor Association and the Downtown Association, Monteith Society and the Carousel, and Albany Regional Museum. That kicks off on this Saturday, June 11th, at the Monteith Park, where little kids will come by and get their passports, get their photo taken, and then spend the summer exploring downtown. So if you haven't,
So what time?
that is at from 11 to 2 p.m. at Monteith River Park.
Thank you
And there
so
will be a
much.
few activities there as well. So that's this Saturday, June 11th. More information is available on the Albany Visitors Association website, which is albanyvisitors.com.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yes.
your time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Next is Carol Davies. Is she available virtually?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to give you a quick update on what I've been doing for our unhoused community members since establishing Community Outreach Assistance Team, or COAT, in December. I have been informing many people about all of the resources that are available in the city and directing them to various agencies. We have served well over 100 people. 2 people were able to get into assisted living, and 4 people are currently in the process of getting approved for assisted living or an adult foster home. I was also able to secure emergency housing vouchers for a number of people, but unfortunately, we were not able to actually get anybody into housing due to the lack of affordable housing here. One of the other things that we've been doing is the city services liaison position that I had talked about previously is still moving ahead. Chris Shandell from the police department, Emma Dean from Albany Helping Hands, and Randy Moore from DHS have been participating in discussions about getting a city services liaison on board. IHN, part of Samaritan, has expressed an interest in funding this position for the first year. So all of that is really great news. We are also going to be meeting with the SIC coordinator for Polk County. The SIC coordinator is basically a city services liaison with a few differences in Polk County. So we'll be talking with that person to get a better idea on what the city services liaison position can be doing. And that is all I have. As I said, I just wanted to update you, and I thank you for listening to me at this late hour, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Carol. I greatly appreciate it. Cypress Clark apparently backed out, so he's not speaking with us this evening. Item number 7 is a second reading of an ordinance, AMC 113-21.11 Delta, paragraph A, Central Albany parking area. As Sean Kidd, page 83 of your packet. Nobody else signed up. I've never done it before, so I just go for the list. So, Sean?
An ordinance amending the Albany Municipal Code, AMC, Chapter 13.21.112, Central Albany Parking Area.
Move to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Thank you. Next is adoption of the consent calendar, item 8. Council,
Move to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
I'm going to say aye, but could I ask a question or do I wait until
No, go ahead,
after?
go ahead.
Okay, so
About the consent calendar?
Yes, sir, that includes the minutes, correct? Okay, so I had a question regarding the minutes from May 9th, excuse me, and I'm wondering if anyone, staff or otherwise, could tell me what became of Mr. DeRosa's request for a noise ordinance. I'm not aware of staff having brought anything to the council. This was a month ago, and I heard from Mrs. DeRosa today that it's kind of business as usual out there with regard to the noise, so I'm hoping
So I will give you feedback on that. Christian
Okay.
Dell is working on that.
a noise ordinance?
Yes, he is. He is
Great.
working on that.
I'm glad to hear that, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the thing is it takes time because he has to look at other cities, what they're doing. and so-
Okay, well, it's been a month, so I thought I'd check in.
Yeah, yeah. But he is working on that.
Great.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Thank you. And we're getting to number, let me see, where are we at? Wait, this is out of order.
Yeah, we've got the 8B and C, the resolutions and
Yeah,
contracts, which
so,
are under consent.
yeah, number, so stress procurement. My thing is, oh, no, never mind.
Mary,
I got
on
it right.
number
I'm
9.
right. We get that. Staff reports for the increased hours of administrative assistant, Mary Dibble.
No, wait, we just,
No, because it covers over from the page.
That was all
No.
consent.
That was all
Ray.
consent. That was consent. So the next page down, so 8 through C.
yeah, no, I'm talking about 8 on consent agenda. It shows 3 resolutions.
You consented to all that stuff
That's
already,
consent.
Right,
calendar.
we just did that on the consent calendar without
Yes.
having to read them.
Right.
Okay.
which I,
And so item 9 is the increase of hours of administrative assistant, Mary Dibble. She stayed here. Thank you, Mary, for sticking around. We talked about this already at the work session.
Yes, thank you, councilors. We talked about this at work session with Peter, and we're hoping to have a motion of approval to increase this position by 12 hours.
Would the
I would
council like to
move
make a
to.
motion?
I would move to increase the AA's hours to full-time as requested.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
so does a resolution come back, or do we need a resolution on this?
We don't need a resolution, we just need a motion from you.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, aye.
then motion passes.
Thank you.
B, item 9 Bravo is communications specialist reclassification, Captain Lyles.
I know Chief Harnden spoke to you
Yes.
on Monday about this, but I wanted to avail myself if you had any further questions regarding both B and C, the reclassification and then the mental health intervention specialist position.
One question, is that you, sir? Are you going to be in that position?
No, I'm a captain with the
Oh,
police
you're the
department.
captain. I'm sorry, I have never met you, and
But
I
I'm-
didn't know. I
but that is
thought
my
maybe we were
division,
meeting
so
you.
I will- so ultimately, I will be the supervisor, the overall supervisor of that division.
Yeah, he's a bit.
Forgive me.
I didn't introduce myself as
Yeah,
captain, it's just.
I just call him Captain Lyles. I've known him forever, so.
I didn't do that.
My apologies.
Brad Lyles, Albany Police Department, captain
Thank-
of the support services.
Okay, council?
I move we approve the communication specialist reclassification on page 102.
Are you doing
Second.
B and C or just B?
So
B
is
and
that
C,
person
well,
already
yeah.
on the force?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the
Reclass.
communication specialist, the reclass, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And he's looking forward to doing that?
He or she are looking forward to it. We will open the process, yes.
So all those in favor, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Thank you, Captain. Don't move. Next, mental health intervention specialist position, Captain Lyles. Have a
I am
report?
not taking that position. But
Thank
I will
you
be
for your
supervising.
clarification, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
And again, a very necessary position with our city. My whole career, over 28 years, we've relied on Lynn County Mental Health, and having a dedicated position to be available for all of our calls dealing with mental health within the city is becoming more paramount.
Yes.
Thank you, Captain. Will the council like to make a motion?
I would move for that we approve the new mental health intervention specialist position.
Second.
I have a motion on 2 seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Council.
Next is City Manager's Report. Director Bailey standing in for Peter Trotzen
Mayor,
today.
I think there's a supplemental agenda. There
Oh,
was
that's
a-
right.
an item
I gotta get the
D
right page. Give me a second.
added, and I think Holly Roten is on the screen to discuss.
Okay, so I'm sorry about that. Thank you. I forgot about the supplemental. Please note the supplemental agenda item for this meeting, number 9, staff reports. Is Holly Roten standing by? There she is.
She is, and Mayor, this is the cost of living adjustment that we discussed in the executive session on Monday night. So just want to remind council of that it was in executive session, so that we're here tonight to vote on it in the public.
Okay. And that's it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. So, Director Roten?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and councilors. The city attorney covered it beautifully. I don't have anything else to add. We had discussion Monday, and we're looking for the council to make a motion to approve at this evening's council meeting.
I
Any
would
questions?
move to approve the cost of living adjustments as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Thank you. Now, we're going back to the regular agenda. City Manager's Report.
Business from the council.
You skipped the council, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I've been listening to them all night, so my fault. So, business from the council. Oh, it's right at the very bottom of my page. Business from the council. Let's start over here with Councilor Novak, and we'll work back this way.
I'm going to say nothing this evening, sir.
Thank you very much. Councilor Kopczynski.
Nothing tonight?
Councilor Smith.
Thank you for letting me sit in tonight. It's been a long almost 3 hours.
Thank you.
Don't,
And I wish
don't
you
get COVID.
I wish you a speedy recovery. Councilor Olson.
No, nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilor Bartholomew.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson.
Because it wasn't discussed with the supplemental budget, with the $1 million that we got to go to the unhoused, mental illness, whatever, I want to make sure that we just don't dwindle that away. I think we need some sort of a workshop or something to think of ideas. I mean, that's a lot of money, and I just have a feeling it's just going to be given away. So I think that we need to know what's it's going for, and we need to have a work session or workshop on it.
So I will respond to that. I'm on the Community Development Commission. We will take that under advisement, and we'll come back with recommendations for council to review and approve or say no. So we already have people set up for that.
Okay. Do you have any idea what ideas you're thinking of?
We haven't even gotten to go ahead to
Okay.
talk about it yet. So that's coming up in our next meeting.
All right.
So I will keep all of you in the loop. I promise you
I
that.
will be watching. Thank you.
And you should.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. I don't think sewer projects qualify for that kind
Oh, no. This is totally about housing for unsheltered folks. So we're already briefed on it. Just a matter of we haven't had a chance to deliberate yet.
Well, housing and services and
Correct.
things like that.
I agree.
And so, I mean, I have
And so there'll be
ideas
an
and stuff.
application process. We'll set up everything for that, and then be a review process, and we'll come back with feedback for you guys to take a look at.
If you could, before you actually send applications out, to let us
Oh,
know.
no, we have to come up with the process first. and
Yeah.
then talk with you.
Yeah, because I just have a feeling about
Oh.
it. Thanks.
I totally agree with you. It's not to be trifled with. Okay, I've got a couple things. Today, my phone blew up. There was a high-speed chase in town, and people at Maple Lawn were locked down, but I didn't realize that I had 4 of my friends in Maple Lawn at the time. And so I reached out to Chief, reached out to Captain Lyles, and it was resolved within, 15 minutes, 10 minutes? So I want to thank you, the police department, for responding so fast to that issue. But my friends were relieved when they found that it wasn't anything related to, the big fear right now is mass shooting. So people were really, really relieved that it wasn't anything like that. It was precautionary. Second thing is I attended Albany Options award ceremony today for kids. It was an amazing experience. A lot of these young people got scholarships. I think a total of like $20,000 in scholarships was given out today at Albany Options. And it was great to see people, celebrating those young folks that have a different path for high school. And so being a part of that for the Optimist Club, we awarded people money. But it was great to see the celebration of families and teachers. And I didn't realize I had like 7 friends that worked there. So it was wonderful to see them as well. And that's it. I think that's it for me tonight. I will go ahead and turn it over to City Manager.
Not city manager.
Tonight you are.
The only thing I have, Mayor, is a reminder that the June 20th work session is actually a budget committee work session with the full budget committee. So the regular time, but it'll be a budget committee workshop, and Director Yeager will be leading that.
Thank you. And so with that, the next meeting is June 20th, is a budget meeting, and Director Yeager will be center stage for that one. And then on June 22nd, we'll be meeting at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. And I'll call for adjournment of the meeting.